This evening, Books and Books is very happy to present Ms. Lisa Leone and her new collection of photographs, Here I Am. Ms. Leone began her career as a photographer shooting musicians Moby, Lauryn Hill, and Maxwell, as well as personalities like Debbie Mazar and Spike Lee. While shooting stills on a music video, the director asked Lisa to shoot B-roll. At that moment, she traded in her stills camera for a film camera. So began her career as a cinematographer, shooting music videos for artists like TLC, Heavy D, D'Angelo, and the Brand New Heavies. A few years later, Lisa began work on Stanley Kubrick's last film, Eyes Wide Shut, doing everything from set decorating, film and lighting tests, acting, and directing second unit. She continued her cinematography work on independent films and shows for other directors. The film Exactly was her debut as a writer, director, and cinematographer, and Good Morning Baby was her second film, amongst her many credits as a director and photographer. Here I Am is the first monograph of Ms. Leone's photography. In it, she chronicles the Bronx, Paris, and Los Angeles of early 1990s hip-hop. These photographs open portals to the sounds, places, and, most importantly, the people who forged and continue to influence the energy that is hip-hop. Tonight, Ms. Leone is going to be in conversation with Ms. Esther Park. Please welcome Lisa and Esther.
Thank you. Well, first things first, thank you, Books and Books, for having us. This was great.
Yes, thank you.
One thing that the bio is missing is that you're the Vice President of Artistic Programs for the National Young Arts Foundation.
This is true.
So my name is Esther. I'm also I also work alongside the amazing Lisa as the Director of Campus Programs for Young Arts. So hopefully I encourage all of you guys to come and visit our website at www.youngarts.org. Prior to that, I also am a music journalist, and I've written for several music magazines as well as like the local weeklies here at Miami New Times. So I'm very well versed in being a moderator for this topic. So first things first, how did you ever get started with photography?
When I was 8 or 9, my Uncle George had a makeshift darkroom in his house upstate New York. And we were out, I don't know where we were, at some fair or something all day, and we developed the film in the bathroom. He made like this whole, he had an enlarger, and the whole thing became a dark room. And I still remember the image. It was me on the carousel. Oh. And I watched the image come up in the developer. Oh. And I was fascinated by that, and then totally hooked. And I was only like 9 or 10, so I wasn't going to be a photographer. But then when I got the opportunity to go to high school, I applied to High School of Art and Design for photography.
Which is a very big high school in New York City, if those that aren't familiar.
Yeah. So then I got in, and then just started photographing then.
Are your parents artistically inclined? So as the mother looks on, but...
Yes. Yes. His mom says. Yes. I mean, they're not working artists, but they're artistically inclined.
I mean, living in New York at the time, that was what
in high school?
Or just in growing up in New York, did you get to go to the major museums? And is there any like specific exhibitions that kind of stuck out for you?
No, when I was little, my best friend at the time, who was still in my life and in the audience, Janine, her mom, Inez, used to take us to the Met. And then she used to take us to painting classes there on Saturdays. And also she would let me get lost in the Egyptian section, because that was like home. At such a young age, I was like, and she'd be like, Lisa, come on, we gotta go. Want to hang out with the mummies.
So in high school, which is, I guess, a definitive point for when you kind of started or inadvertently started your career, what were you shooting at the time?
At the time, it was like high school assignments, and then my teacher got me a job in a photo studio, so after school I would work. So it was kind of cool. I was young, 15, 16, working in photo studios. But what was happening at the same time in New York City and also art and design was also, we can call the high school of graffiti and breakdancing back in the 80s. So all the significant graffiti artists and breakdancers and stuff that have become big were at my high school at the same time. So what was happening is that, in 1983, Flashdance came out with breakdancing, Style Wars about graffiti, Wild Style, about that scene. So in that year, everything exploded. And I was in high school, and all my friends were in all those movies. So they started to blow up, and then it was about traveling around the world. So then they needed pictures. So, so they needed photos, and they say, can you just take some shots? It was like this new thing exploding around the world called hip hop that nobody really knew about.
Right.
So it was just like a very organic way of, just they needed the pictures, and I would, was documenting and taking pictures anyway. So it worked.
And did you learn technique? Like, were these photos, because kind of what you're known for is these very non-stage, candid photos. Is that something that you learned, or
that
was
wasn't
that just
learned in high school? And I look back and I wish they would have kind of focused on that kind of more of documentary kind of thing. It was really, I was in high school, so it was much more, this is how you light, this is how you develop, and blah blah blah. That came later when I went to RISD. I got a scholarship to RISD, and I was influenced by, all of a sudden I got turned on to like Cartier-Bresson and Rodchenko and Arnold Newman. And I just felt more comfortable with that naturalistic way of shooting, and kind of being, I was so in love with Bresson, of course. It's like I got the Leica with the 35 millimeter lens, like exactly how he did it, which actually turns out to be the best camera to use in those kind of situations, because it's so quiet and small. It's not a big distraction like now you hear, it's like click, 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 click. Nobody would hear me, and I would just be click,
right,
and then put the camera down. And so it was simpler to be able to capture those images.
Well, speaking of that, maybe we should look at some of your photos to see those candid photos.
Okay.
So, busting out those remote control.
So we start with, So Debbie.
So tell us about, everyone's familiar with Debbie Mazar, yes? Yes.
So Debbie and I met when we were 16, actually. We met, we were going out with brothers who were graffiti artists, Carlos and Randy. And, we knew that we were going to be friends forever. We just connected. And we're still friends with the brothers, and I'm godmother to her kids. Like, the connection just started. But, Debbie first was a makeup artist, but she was always into fashion. She was, on the scene in New York, and always very, gave Madonna her look, basically. So she always looked great. So she was great to photograph. And then when she decided to become an actress, we lived in the same neighborhood in the West Village, and I saw those stairs and I loved them, and I was like, just sit on those stairs. And we would do that all the time. She would just like sit, and she was so great at just getting into a mode.
Right.
I could just do a book on Debbie, So she would that was like 3 minutes. We probably did some pictures on the stairs, and then we're like, okay, keep it moving, whatever we were doing.
Wow.
So we were like great collaborators in that way. And plus we loved the same films. We talk about photography a lot, so we knew exactly what each other were into. So there was a shorthand of what kind of images that we were both interested in making.
Right.
So, and that's, Guru, who's now passed away, and Fable and Wiggles. So the one to the right of Fable and Wiggles is a perfect example. Like, I went to high school with them, and they became huge. Back then they were kind of the founders of Electric Boogie and so on and so forth. So, Popping, yeah, exactly. So that's that. And that Guru one is, we shot in Paris when I went with Fab Five Freddy to do the MC Solar and Guru video. So that was fun.
Where was this?
This was in LA, actually. This was a Spike Jonze shoot, the drop video, which was really interesting. He basically had them do everything, say all the lyrics backwards. And then he reversed the film. So you had these cue cards where everything, where they had to rap, it was phonetically backwards, everything.
Wow.
So it was a great video, and it was a great shoot. It was fun. That was on the streets of LA. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
Yes.
And Eric Sermon and Big Daddy Kane, and that's in Henry Chalfant's studio of Big Daddy Kane. And it's funny because, like I said, I was using that little Leica camera, right. And we got into a big argument because it was like this, you know, the way that I shoot, like I said, I'm not like speedy shooting. And he was getting annoyed, and he's like, you know, yesterday I was at a shoot and they, you know, had this camera and they were going, you know, this shooting, and you have this piece of shit camera. And I was like, do I tell you what to do in the studio? Like, do I go into your rap sessions? So, but it was funny. I was like, okay, I'm sure this Leica is much more expensive. Again, I used to shoot a lot in Henry Chalfant's studio. Henry had an amazing studio in Soho. And his, like, if you know anything about that graffiti scene, or if you read any of the documentaries or anything, it was the hub for all the graffiti writers. And so after school, we used to go to Henry's studio in Soho. It was on Grand off West Broadway. This is before Soho became...
Like, what year was this? 1980?
82, 83.
Right.
You know, so it was a huge studio. Henry was a sculptor. But Henry used to photograph. He's got, you know, a bunch of photograph books now of all the trains. So all the writers would call right after they did a piece, call Henry at like 3 a.m. and be like, yo, Henry, you gotta go on the D line. I just took a... And Henry would get out of bed, wait on the platform, take the pictures. But now it's like he documented them. Like, right. Now we have these documents, you know. So, you know, I'm still close with Henry. He sold that studio.
Has Henry given you any tips on photography?
You know what's funny? No, we never really talked about it.
He's like one of the greatest living hip-hop photographers, and not one advice?
Because it was never, I don't know, we never like talked about it. Like, and I think about all the stuff I didn't photograph, you know? It's like because I was so young and we were just kind of like hanging out.
Right.
And I thought, why didn't Henry tell me to photograph more or like something? Like, I wasn't thinking about it, but, you know, when you're in a moment, and who knew? I mean, you have to understand the time. Like,
right.
I didn't know that it was going to become this global
right.
billion-dollar phenomenon. Like, we were just, like, having
fun.
Yeah. And it was a moment. It was cool, but...
You weren't capturing history at that moment. It were just...
No, it was, right. You know, we were just, whatever, hanging out. So, yeah, it wasn't just, and I was still young too, so it's not like, you know, like Russell Simmons, like like we also hang out and go to the same clubs and stuff, but they were also like 10 years older or like 8 years older, so I was still really young. I didn't have that, you know, I was 16.
Right.
So I wasn't thinking, I was more like thinking about my boyfriend and like, you know, whatever. So...
Lisa's mom shaking her head for those that can't see this in disapproval.
This is Crazy Legs and his house in the Bronx.
What are the paintings behind him?
One's a Futura painting.
Nice.
And I don't know what the other painting is actually.
I hope he kept it.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure.
What's the Wiggles movie?
Oh yeah, Mr. Wiggles was our friend, like Fable and Wiggles. There was a previous picture of Wiggles. So I don't know what that little thing was from. It might have been some, you know, at that time was a time Rocksteady and rhythm technicians were traveling a lot. So it might have been like a little thing that they might have had for...
Do you remember the phone call? He looks very distressed.
No. I don't. We were all like outside and I happened to walk in and I don't know why I decided to just shoot him at that moment, but I saw it. That's Mare. That was my high school boyfriend, Mare 139.
Oh,
that
again,
was,
Lisa's mom shaking her
that
head.
Was And his brother, Kel First, was Debbie's boyfriend. So that's the connects. That's just the subways. We used to kind of just open the, sorry, Mom, but you're going to have to hear it. But we used to open in the sidewalks, there are huge, big steel doors that you don't realize, you just walk over them. But if you open those up, which I'm sure they're locked now, but in the 80s they weren't locked, you could just go down the ladder and then you're in the middle of the tunnel.
Right.
And you could just walk to the next stop.
Right.
Train stop.
You had no ounce of fear whatsoever going down to a dark, rat-infested tunnel? A female at that? No, not really.
I mean, I don't know.
That's what they did.
16.
Yeah, I was 16. It was fun. It was an adventure. It was an adventure, and then it would go and shoot, I was just always like, which is the third rail? Which one? I just don't want to step on the third rail.
So did you always, running through the city, have a camera with you at all times? Was that kind of your
I
thing?
did, but back then it was, in high school I didn't have a Leica. I had, it was just like a little point and shoot. And then afterwards I would carry the little Contax T3. I have trunks of just
Contacts.
of photos of the Contax of just, lots and lots. Yeah, because also, remember again, that time, there were no cell phones. Not everybody had a camera. I'd be like the only one with a camera.
Right.
So also there wasn't that awareness all the time of like, let me see that picture.
Right.
Oh, let me see, you took a picture, or 10 people taking the picture at the same time. And, once that started happening, I kind of like put my camera down because it was kind of like a feeling was gone. Before you could be a little bit more discerning of a moment that you wanted to shoot, and a feeling that you would capture instead of just being, like, everybody shooting at the same thing. And I was like, I don't like this. That's Mary J. Blige when I happened to be at the record company I was leaving and they said, hey, you want to meet our new artist? And I said, yeah, sure. And then she was in a conference room. That was just like in a conference room. And yes, before she did a video or an album or anything. So.
Do you know how old she was in that photo?
I think that she was like 19.
Wow.
I want to say. Yeah, she was a babe.
A baby and a babe.
I have some writings. Grandmaster Flash. This was in Rocksteady Park, where every year, Rocksteady Park was on 98th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. And they called it Rocksteady Park because most of Rocksteady lived in the building next door to the park. So it was just like Rocksteady Park. And so they would have these anniversaries every year, and there would be a bunch of MCs and a DJ contest and graffiti writing, and they've totally redid the whole park now. It's unrecognizable. They took down the handball courts, like you can't. But
And what's with the face? You look so upset.
well, it's really funny because the woman that he's talking to, that you can, or he's looking at, that you can hardly see, her name was Margaret, and she was the manager for Rhythm Technicians and a couple of other like dance troupes that people weren't too happy with. Because at that time also it was like, they were so young and like I said, it was a new thing. So nobody knew what was happening. And after a while, people started to think that they were being taken advantage of, blah, blah, blah. So that's why it was like this perfect moment of like capturing the whole of, this is what the scene is, becoming or whatever. And I love his outfit.
Yes. Oh, yes.
This is Drina De Niro, who is
Robert De Niro's daughter. Yes.
Yeah, but is a good friend. She was a DJ back then, so she was in the scene as well. And this was just one day a bunch of us went out to Brooklyn to actually, Kellen Mayer got a studio in Williamsburg. Williamsburg, by the way, there was nobody living there. They had this huge 2-story loft for like under $1,000, and so we just took a walk to the docks, and it was
Just out of curiosity, has her dad ever seen this photo?
This photo?
Did he approve her outfits back then?
Oh yeah. Well, she's gorgeous. I mean, yeah. I mean, nobody was complaining about.
So
her
you talking to
outfits.
me?
So yes, this Fab and Shaba and Fab Five Freddy in Paris. Fab and I are old friends, and we used to travel a lot together. And he was directing, so he would always say, "Yeah, I'm doing this. Come down." And then the Paris one was when we were. He was going to Paris to direct that MC Solar and Guru video. And we were like, he's like, "You should come." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not just coming to Paris. Like, we got to get there." So we devised this, like, let's get Vibe magazine. We'll pitch a, hip hop in Paris story. And he was like, "All right, great." So I pitched the story because I was working with Vibe anyway. And they went for it and they paid for me to go to Paris, and I shot the video, and we met all these other like beginning pioneers of hip hop, and met my future collaborator, Thibaut de Longueville, who was Fab's assistant that I co-directed Just for Kicks, the film with. So, yeah, it was fun. That was a really fun trip. And Rosie Perez directing her second music video.
Who's now on The View.
I know, Broadway.
And Broadway.
Yeah, who still remains a close friend. MC Light. Run DMC. This photo, I always, I have a lot of other photos of Run DMC, but I think that I really like this photo and chose this because, Jay is really highlighted, and because of Jay's untimely death, and he kind of, nobody talks about Jay as much. You have like Run and DMC's doing all this great work, but there was something that was like kind of illuminated for me about Jay in that photo. That
And again,
he's a DJ.
This wasn't staged. You weren't. Was this lit in any way? It
No,
just happened to.
This was basically they were doing the music video, and so. A lot of times I didn't shoot like what they were staging. It would be like outside or whatever. And this looks like they were just like walking or going somewhere. And it was just a moment to catch of that. And then on the left is Slick Rick in prison at Rikers Island. I went to Rikers Island with Russell Simmons to go to see Slick Rick. And I was so excited because I love Slick Rick. Like Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh. To me, like I can every word or every song. I love them. But it's the only time I got to photograph Slick Rick was in prison. But yeah, so that was the only time I got to meet him. And that was just on a music video. We were on the Brooklyn Bridge of that girl, and I just like the texture and stuff. Eazy-E.
Eazy-E.
That was actually in New York, not LA.
Wow. That's dangerous. No.
Isaac Hayes, which was great. This one I kind of staged. Like there was a video shoot in Brooklyn. He was doing a video shoot, so I was shooting that, but then there was a break, and my favorite things to shoot are on subways and trains, and at the L train I'm totally in love with. I mean, being a fourth generation New Yorker, there's just something about the roots of that and the color and the rust and all that stuff. So I saw the sun coming in, and I just asked him, like, "Would you stand here?" He was cool. So that was that. Biggie. I was
early.
Backstage. Yeah, early Biggie backstage.
So when you do, that's a baby Snoop. Did you ever, you were kind of at the precipice for a lot of these young emerging hip hop artists like Snoop, who barely has a mustache in that photo.
It's his first video.
Did you ever kind of know that this person is going to be huge, like Biggie, Snoop, or were you just
Snoop?
kind of
I felt like yes, because of the Chronic album.
Okay.
And Dre was behind him, and when Chronic came out, Dr. Dre produced Snoop. Produced the Chronic, and then produced Snoop's album.
Right.
And when Chronic came out, I'll never forget, I don't know, I was somewhere on the street, I don't remember where we were, and Fab just came back from LA, and he was hanging out with them. He was like, "Yo, you gotta get in the car, listen to this." And it was before the album came out. And it was like, Because it was so different from
Right.
anything. It just like was like, what is this? Again, remember, it's like early 90s. Such a baby time still for hip hop. You know, really, you're talking 1983 is when the world saw it in films. And then, you know, so it was, you know, so Biggie, yeah, but Snoop definitely. But he was very, very shy and quiet, and you know, he recently I gave him that photo, and he was like, "Oh my God."
What did he say when you gave him that photo?
Actually, it was funny because I gave him the photo, and he just kept looking at me like,
Yeah.
and I was like, "What do you keep looking at me like that for? Like what?" And he said, He said, you know, it doesn't matter what you look like, what clothes you're wearing, what, you know, he's like, you have hip hop in your blood. And I said, what makes you say that? He said, because I was really shy back then. And he said, if you look at any photographs of me back then, I was very, always in a pose or quiet. He said, I'm so open and vulnerable in that photo that I don't know how you got that. So I was like, wow, that was kind of cool. I was like, oh, okay, I'll go with that. So that was also from the Snoop video that Fab was directing, and it was like the first encounter with LA gangs. It was so interesting because, you know, being from New York, I was always like, oh, whatever. They always talk about this LA gang. And the VIP was like the Long Beach record company. Yeah, I mean record store. So they wanted to do it there to represent, I guess, that. But all in the parking lot were all of a sudden these gang members with like rollers and chancletas and like tattoos. And I was like, and even Fab had this friend that was a big drug dealer and kind of a very tough Jamaican scary guy. And we were both like, holy shit, these guys are scary. I was like, God, even he's scared of these guys. So then when we went to the other location, there was a big shootout. All of a sudden we are guns like and helicopters and I'm start shooting and Fab is like, come on, Lisa, let's go. And I'm still shooting and trying to go and he's like, you're gonna get a shot. And Fab didn't drive at the time. So I had my rent-a-car and we hopped in the rent-a-car and I was like, outside the parking lot. And then like a week later we finished the whatchamacallit, the video, and that was my first introduction to Snoop because I didn't meet him yet. Yeah. And it was so interesting. It's like it got LA culture because he looked at me and he went, "You were the one that drove Fab out of the park the other day, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, you cut me and Suge off." I was like, "I was getting out of there. Sorry." I was like, "Well, whatever." Yeah, so we finished the video inside with a lot of security. So, yeah. And then, of course, Wyclef and Lauryn Hill, Fugees, on a rooftop in East Harlem. That was also the...
Oh, right, yeah.
You know, kind of like all the friends and stuff. And you could see Miguel, of course, he's the record company guy with the big cell phone.
The brick cell phone.
Yeah, with the brick cell phone and the whole style. Back then is very 90s New York. So funny. That's some more. A random chicken, you know, East Harlem, you know, probably from like some Botanica.
There's probably a Gap.
A chicken
right
that
now.
escaped from the Botanica.
Right. Now it's a Gap in the same area. Yeah.
That was in Paris, Fab. And then Tretch from Naughty by Nature and Das Effects and EPMD.
Have you noticed that your photos change based on era or based on years? Or has it kind of been consistent stylistically?
I think it's been consistent stylistically. I think that they look different, like the one with this Das Effects and EPMD, because that was that 90s music video look, and that's where we were. It was shiny. Yeah, exactly. It's very shiny. Yeah, too shiny. Shiny and blue. So that was Queen Latifah, and one of her first, you know, her beginnings of music videos. We were in her hometown, Irvington. Nice jacket.
Nice jacket.
And then this was on the set of the remix of I Gotta Be Down, Brandy's, with Yo-Yo, Light, Brandy, and Latifah.
How was it also being a female photographer during that very
It was
male-centric
very interesting, yeah.
industry?
Yeah, it was very.
Did they tell you, like, shoot this, shoot that? What are you, like?
No, it was more like, hey.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember like Heavy D and the boys.
Oh.
Yeah, the boys were a little rough. I was like, hold it back there, guys. Yeah, it was more like that kind of. Yeah, it's true because there weren't a lot of. There was only a couple of photographers shooting that at the same time, and
just any photographer shooting.
but also
that,
Sue Kwan was also shooting back then too. But yeah, but once you you have the lingo and you just bred Nubians. This is also at Rocksteady Park, Grandmaster Kaz and AG from Cold Crush.
Oh.
Kaz was in our film also of Just for Kicks. He's hilarious. So Kaz is kind of like the sad story with Grandmaster Kaz is that, everybody knows the song Rapper's Delight, right? Of course. Well, the guy who recorded Rapper's Delight said to Kaz, which was Casanova, hey, I'm just going to do this little thing. Can I borrow your rhymes?
Oh.
And Kaz was like, sure. I mean, this is a movie and a story of itself. And it became Rapper's Delight. And Kaz, never got any kind of... He did like a rebuttal for it, but whatever. It didn't become... So even in Rapper's Delight, they say, I'm Casanova. That's Kaz. So... early hip-hop stories that kind of, a lot of the pioneers, like the real guys that were on the street and starting everything, they never really got any
recognition,
any kind of the light that other people got. So.
Oh, Baby Questlove.
Baby Questlove and Tretch. Yeah. I know. Now he's on Jimmy Fallon.
Yes.
And everywhere else.
Everywhere
in
else.
the world.
And a little bigger.
Method Man, rolling a blunt, of course. And Snoop sleeping backstage. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure, exactly. And this is on the OPP video. Naughty by Nature. Fable. This was in Paris where we shot. I don't know, there's something about that I just love. Guru, again in Paris, it's in that same area where we shot. Cool G Rap. This is the making of Illmatic, Nas's first album. I didn't realize I was the only photographer and didn't even remember that I took the pictures until like 20 years later I went in and was like, let me see what I got in the files. And people were like, what, you have those photos? So, Illmatic turned out to be what some call the quintessential best hip-hop album that's ever made. As Baby Nas in the studio with Q-Tip and Large Professor, and it was an amazing album. There they are, all together, primo. Doze, who I went to high school with, who is a rocksteady dancer, but also artist and a great artist now. He's living like on a farm in Southern California and is an amazing painter. And Fab and, oh my God, I was going to say Quincy Jones. Roy Ayers.
Roy Ayers.
And of course, LL and Yo-Yo. And Debbie, again, the train theme. We always love the train. That was in Coney Island. Again.
It's like from like the 50s, like
I know.
pinup.
But again, this was like, we were waiting the train. I was like, oh my God, look at the light. Get in the train, just stand by the door. Wow. And we were like holding the door and I was like, tick, 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 tick. Okay, we got it. It's like Fast and Furious. Fable and Wiggles. Again, they just needed like publicity shots to go, and that's it. That's on the book. So.
Awesome.
Thank you.
How are we with time? We're good?
Plenty of time. Questions,
Oh.
comments, plenty of time.
I was going quick because I didn't know.
Questions from the audience?
So everybody know.
Comments? Well, I have a question. Why the title? Here I am.
I'm not good with titles. I'm going to start there. Like any of my films, I haven't named any of them. It's a thing. It's really hard to pick a title. So when Michelle Dunmarsh, the publisher, was, saying, like, okay, what do you want to name it? I called Fable. And in about 2 minutes, Fable gave me like 5 titles. He's like, I don't know, maybe, blah, 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 blah. And then here I am stuck because, first of all, it's, I thought it's the Big Daddy Kane, Raw.
Right.
Here I am, R-A-W. So I was like, oh, I love that song. But also, these are a lot of young artists. So it's kind of like, here I am. It's like they've arrived in the world. It's that time for, the hip hop to kind of come to that place.
What were the
So-
other titles? I'm just curious. What were the other titles that
The
didn't
other
make the
title, God, the one that I really loved, which
Uh-huh.
of course now I'm spacing, we couldn't because, maybe if I say the name, because it was the title of a Kool Moe Dee song.
cut?
And we weren't, and then it was like gonna be like we'd have to get rights from Kool Moe Dee and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, all right. So that was, Here I Am was my number 2.
Got it.
So I decided that.
It's stuck.
I like it. Yeah, no, and it was simple, like short. It kind of felt good.
That looks like a question.
Yes. I was like, Jordan?
Jordan's contemplating. She was around back then. New York
Not as
City.
much as you were. But I have a story about Queen Latifah.
What'd you say? You have a story about Queen Latifah?
No, being in her new music seminar showcase when she was brand new, and
Yeah.
standing next to some guy in the crowd, and some asshole. He said, "Somebody get that fat bitch off the stage." And I said something to him like, "Shut up! You don't know what you're talking about." And then when she blew up, I remember thinking,
I stuck up for her.
"Okay,
You stuck up for her. Exactly.
Show your. Bet you went far in the music business.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do you
So,
ever think
sorry.
about, given how much hip hop, like on every level, the dance, the music, the culture, the humongous influence it's had on pop culture and culture, do you ever try to draw the lines, make a connection between what it was then, where it started from, to what it grew into?
I feel like it lost everything in a way. I mean, I don't, to be honest, like, I don't listen to a lot of like new hip hop. I don't really know as much. There was like a raw collaborative. It just felt like there was a community. It was collaborative. It was like this creativity that was coming out just so organically that I don't know. I mean, I guess there's connections, but even the beats have changed to more of like a pop way of even how it the music sounds. I'm not answering your question. Well, what's your question?
Do you ever think about how it got from?
Oh, there to there? Yeah, money. I'd say money. I mean, I think that it got glossier and glossier. What happened was, it was really interesting. I started from photography. There was a director who asked me to shoot B-roll for a music video. And then from that, I started doing the cinematography for music videos in the early 90s. So I shot like a Heavy D and TLC and Brand New Heavies. I was shooting music videos, not you know, with my still camera with that. And they were like, you know, if you had $200,000 for a budget, it was huge. Then I went and worked for Stanley Kubrick for 4 years and like left the whole world, you know. And I guess for about 96, I started working for Stanley. I came back when he died in 99, and I couldn't work. I couldn't show my reel or anything because the videos now were like $2 million. And it was like this glossy and money, and it was
Shiny.
it's shiny, and it became this other thing. And I was like, whoa. And my reel was still like, you know, older. So it was just kept getting pumped in more money, more money, more money. And commercial, you know, it just became, you know, just became commercial. I think that they realized how much they could sell, how many albums they were selling, how many shows, how the kids were getting into it, how like, wow, look at the white kids in Middle America are going for it, you know, like, and it just, the more money it made, it was like the more studio level or the more, and then I think with technology, you know, and then cell phones, everybody sort of had cell phones, so now you can, you know, photograph or do this, you know, it turned into, it's like I came back and I was like, what happened? You know, it really turned into another thing in those 4 years. I'd say like from 96 to 99. It was a period of complete expansion with the budgets, for the videos, for the albums, for everything.
Do you think that when these people started and they were not getting paid the kind of money that they're making now, or even when you came back, or any money, they did it because they felt it and it was their creativity. So the sound was different, the feeling was different. As soon as the money people started coming in, they had to do what the money people wanted. So
well, there was definitely a lot of, and I'm sure that still happens today. There was definitely a lot of artists that I saw, and even in the Illmatic session, I remember in that day that, you know, it was upset that the record company wanted to go this way, and he was like, but it's got to be like this, and you know, and it was like you have to fight for that vision and stay like where you are for that. So yeah, and I think a lot of younger artists, you know, will cave for that or kind of go for that. I mean, I remember even like I used to do shoot all of Craig Mack's videos. Craig Mack who did Flavor in Your Ear, which was like the biggest hit. And at the time, Puffy, you know, that was under Bad Boy, Puffy's company. But then as soon as Biggie came out, after Craig Mack, you know, we were in the middle of editing Craig Mack video, and Puffy didn't even tell us. He decided he was going to drop the video and drop him and everything, and we're still editing. It was Puffy's girlfriend at the time that was like, guys, he's not doing that. We're like, what? So, you know, I don't know. So
kind of like Empire.
It was Puffy that ruined hip hop. This is what she's trying to say.
So yeah, I think that once people see how much money that was being able to be made, you know, they didn't make any money back then, I'm sure. But I mean, the record companies.
Any other questions?
And then the videos and all that stuff, the photo shoots come out of the artist's budget. They think that the record company's paying for it. So I used to yell at them and be like, guys, don't be 4 hours late and make us go into overtime, because that's coming out of your money.
Yeah.
That's, you know, it's like, you think you're like cool showing up zooted and like, I'm 4 hours late for my video, you're all waiting for me. Guess what? The record company's taking that off. And that's why Jay-Z changed everything. Because when Jay would get, if call time for music video was 6 a.m., Jay was there at 5 a.m. watching. All right, this is my money. He's the first one that understood the whole game. And he would be there before anybody, waiting. You're late. What are you doing? What's happening? Blah, blah, blah. And he changed the whole game in that way. And that's why he's Jay-Z. He's worth $500 million right now. Because he was also a businessman. Because that drug dealing, you learn. As long as you don't use the product, you're good.
Direct quote. And with that,
So my words of wisdom.
all right, guys, thank you so much. Let's give it up for Lisa Leone.
Thank you for coming. What you telling me about that?
Okay, folks, so if there are no more questions, then a reminder to our internet audience at home, still plenty of time to get a copy of Here I Am, and we'll ship it to wherever you are in the United States free of charge. For those of you here in the house, we have the book for sale at the counter in the front room over there. Lisa's going to be signing at the table to the left of the screen. I want to thank our interviewer today, Esther Park. And please, and please give another hand to Lisa Leone. Thanks very much. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.